Hello everyone and welcome back to the Iron Mindset. It is I, Ian, and we are going to run through a question that I was asked recently over on Instagram. So you can follow me over there at Iron Ian PT. So the question was from a new trainer who's recently qualified through Image Fitness. And the question was, is there anything that they should avoid when they get into the business? So naturally now, as we are coming to the time when gyms are going to reopen here in Ireland, many people are going to be scrambling to come back to the gym. A lot of people qualified through the lockdown when they realized fitness was maybe a thing they wanted to get into. So they wanted to know what would be the 5 things. Well, they didn't ask specifically for 5, but I said I'll just do a quick list of 5 things that I would avoid as a newer trainer coming into the fitness industry. Now, understand there is nuance in everything. So this advice can be applicable to some, and maybe for others it's not quite as applicable. But we'll try and make it as general as possible. So number one, I would always advise most new trainers to avoid going exclusively online or even taking on a lot of online clients in their first year or two in fitness. The reason for this is if you've never worked with somebody in person, you've never had to, speak to someone face to face and work through some of the issues they may be having in training or with their diet or their behavior, you are not going to be well equipped to help them do it online, where it's going to be way more complicated. There's way more barriers to good communication. So my advice would be, if you're going to start out, try at least for a year work in a commercial gym where, for one, you're going to have a broader range of clients available, a broader range of specializations or people with different needs. Whereas if you go exclusively online, you're really making your business about this small because no one knows who you are. You've no tried and tested business. You've no tried and tested modalities. No one knows that you're reputable. You've no referrals. You've no testimonials. You know what I'm saying? Not only that, but like, for example, if somebody comes to you with an issue that, they're having discomfort in their hip during their squat and you've no practical experience, your entire job becomes Googling things. So your job becomes very not that valuable. Now, what I would say is when you have a couple of years of experience on you and you've dealt with people in person and you're a very well-educated trainer who has encountered some of these things and does have the practical knowledge and has worked with people to actually put them into practice in person, then for sure go online. Like, I recommend to a lot of people, if they're at the stage where they feel confident enough to train in the gym, they're decent with their diet, but they just need a bit of direction, I would say online coaching is probably the way to go for them. They don't need to be micromanaged session to session. Holy shit, that was hard to get out. So I would usually send them to Ben Crawwell, who is an abs powerlifter who works exclusively with men online and has been getting amazing results for them with their physiques. I would also recommend Shane Story, who works with both men and women, who would be very, very good for your general population. He's encountered a lot of different things. He used to work in FlightFit CHQ, so he's got a lot of in-person experience as well. And his business model online, from what I see, is very, very detailed, very, very good. So he'd be another one. Then another one, I don't know if he's still doing it as regularly, but Christian Rosca of Imperium Strength and Hypertrophy would be one I'd recommend, and Dermot Kavanagh. These would be the ones that I would be aware of. Specifically, the last two guys would be more for so Dermot and Christian would be more about bodybuilding and things like that. So you've got quite a wide array of people that I know who have worked in person. Like they've done their what would you say? They've done their hours, they've put the work in, they've paid their dues, they've worked with people in person and have moved the majority of their business online, and now have that backbone, that practical experience to actually have the knowledge to work with people online. And if they do encounter issues, they're going to know how to combat them. So that would be my best advice. It's not that you should never go online, but one is establish a client base, let's say over a year, maybe 2. Then have an actual structure for how your online business works, because sending somebody a program, a generic fucking program, and a list of macros to follow is not necessarily the best way to get people the results that they want, and then check in on WhatsApp once in a while. That's not necessarily the way it works. So I would say spend the time for grafting first, and then maybe speak to another online coach and see how they do it, what spreadsheets they use, what apps they use, what infrastructure they have for making their business work. All right, I got a prompt on my screen saying there might be issues with my mic, as you see here right in front of me. So if the sound quality is off, that's why. In any case, we will crack on. I actually left my list here, so I'm going to grab it. So number 2 is going to be creating barriers to entry. So what that means is, if you have new people coming into the gym and they maybe don't move exactly the way you would like them to, let's say in a squat or a deadlift, that does not mean that this person is training in a way that's necessarily unsafe. So my best advice on this one would be, don't hold your, pre-established or pre-learned biases against certain modalities or ways of moving or even things to do in the gym. Don't let those be barriers to stop you from letting the client progress the way they want or to enjoy training the way they like. So what that would mean for you, how would I say this? I actually first had to lean into the camera there and check. I for a second thought I hadn't been recording like the last couple of minutes. I was like, fuck my life. But it is, thank fuck. So creating a barrier to entry would be either making somebody go through an arbitrary number of tests that they have to pass before they can exercise. But, the only person creating these tests and these standards is you. Standards don't exist. Unless, of course, you're going something specific like, let's say, powerlifting or weightlifting. Then the other one would be, for example, somebody saying they have to have a certain range of motion before you let them use a bar or dumbbells or whatever. Another one would be, not letting people. So when it comes to adherence, like I'll actually give you, this is one I used to believe way back in 2013, 2014 when I was training. I didn't train arms like with isometrics because I believe they would blunt my ability or blunt my strength to do like bench and rows and presses and things like that, which was retarded. And it's why I think for a long time I had very underdeveloped biceps in comparison to the rest of my body. So that's one preconceived notion that I just had, and I probably read somewhere on some bro website in 2011 or 2012, and I carried it with me for years. And it was only when I started training with Eddie Molina, who is a good friend of mine, he got me to start training my arms a little bit. And it was only actually last year during the first lockdown I invested in a set of dumbbells to specifically train biceps because I had shitty biceps, and now I actually enjoy training arms. Used to fucking hate it. And had no downside to my rows, my bench, my deadlift, my squat, anything. If anything, I'm not saying it's helped, but my elbows feel a lot healthier than they used to. So maybe that has something to do with it. Who knows? But in any case, your preconceived notions aren't always necessarily going to be what's suitable for that client. So we're creating barriers to entry, just to swing it back around. So for example, if you bring somebody through a screen and you find for example, they don't have let's say great ankle dorsiflexion, it's not necessarily your job as their trainer to find a way that they have to squat perfectly to what you want. If they hinge forward a little more, there's no reason, for example, that they can't just squat that way. You know what I mean? As long as they're still squatting and comfortable to do it, and they want to squat a bar, that's the way they want to do it, and you want them to squat a bar, and that's on the program. Let them move in the way that feels natural to them. But let's say it doesn't feel very good for them, it's not very stable, the bar is very, very far forward. There's nothing wrong with you sticking a plate under their heels, and if they feel more comfortable doing it that way, then sure, fire on ahead. Every gym they go to is going to have a plate that they can throw their heels up on, or a corner they can stand on, or whatever. So find ways that they can participate, ways that they can take part and enjoy the exercise, rather than spending 30 to 40 minutes of their 1 hour session rolling around on the ground with bands around their knees or around their ankles or around their arms or waists or whatever. It shouldn't be if they're coming to you and they're spending more time warming up or doing prehab than they are actual training, then you're not really doing your job. All right. So what best advice I could give you on that one is bring them in. Maybe, give the client a warm. This is what I used to do. I used to send my clients a warm up and say, if you could show up 10 minutes early for the session, go through these warm ups, and then we just start the session on the hour. But even nowadays, most of them still do it. But now, when they just show up, I'm going to bring them through a quick warm, let's say we're going to squat. I'll have them do a few bodyweight squats, squat the empty bar, and then we'll do 1, 2, or maybe 3 warm-up sets, incrementally building up to their working weight. That's how I do it now, and there's been no hassle. Alright, so number 3 is relying exclusively on Instagram for your education. So when you come out of your little course, no matter where it was, or whether you went to Satanta, or you went to Image, or you went to Elite or FitCert, or you did it online, it doesn't matter. It all basically rewards the same thing. You're all working in the same field and have been given the same, outdated information, to be honest. But the issue is that a majority of people, either one, don't spend any time upskilling at all. So they don't do anything outside of, after getting their cert, they're still reciting the same outdated information that isn't actually applicable anymore and isn't actually very helpful. Or, all their knowledge is based on something a 1-minute clip they watched on Instagram. So if you are a PT, your education never stops. Work with other trainers. Chat to your fellow trainers in your gym. Go to seminars when they're back. There's webinars all the time. There's free content online from Untamed Strength, from Barbell Medicine, from Renaissance Periodization, Juggernaut Training, Clinical Athlete. There's podcasts to listen to. Locally, Odyssey are putting out a podcast and they've had some great guests on there. Your education should never stop, ever. Like, I know for me, I heard this quote before, and it didn't make sense to me when I first got into training, but it does, training people, but it does now. If you don't look back on programs you were writing a year ago and cringe a little bit inside, you're probably not progressing that fast. And I felt attacked when I read it, because now I actually understand it fully. If I look at a program I'd say in 2019, I can see how I've learned way more since then. But at the same time, it keeps me up, like all the time. Every time I reiterate on programs for clients, I can see ways to make it better or more individual to their needs from their feedback exclusively, which is obviously a lot easier when you're working with people in person. Hence the try work with people in person when we can. So if it's a case that you are watching, let's say, a lot of content on Instagram, let's say you're watching like the prehab guys, or Move You, or Squat You, or whoever you might have, ask yourself, how applicable is this information to what I'm doing? You know what I'm saying? So, like, unless it's helping you get clients into the gym and exercising and eating, you know, a healthier diet, then it's probably not really something that you need to worry about too much. If it's for your own self or whatever, crack on ahead. But I would say this, just because information is well presented on Instagram does not necessarily mean that the information is actually good or valuable or actually founded in any real evidence. So you got to find ways to filter through this, and the best way to begin is to start conferring with other trainers. I would say, I know in my particular scenario, in my gym, I work alongside a lot of guys that are quite knowledgeable, they know their stuff. Online, I'll chat to other coaches quite a bit just to get their insight. I mentioned earlier on, Shane Story, great guy, knows his stuff, puts up a lot of great content. So does Ben Crawwell. I chat to Connor Campbell from Odyssey Strength every now and then about training. He knows his stuff. So start to confer with other people, see where their thought process is going. Yeah, you don't have to necessarily agree with everything, but this is the beauty. We can all have reasonable discourse and different approaches. And by doing so, even if we don't agree now, a year down the road, we'll go, fuck, that bastard had a point. That's actually good. That works. So you can find ways to educate yourself as you go, but just don't rely exclusively on 1 minute little Instagram videos or infographics to base your entire training education on. Not that there's anything wrong with them necessarily in general, but you should be looking, if you're going to be in fitness for a while, you owe it to yourself and your clients, there's a duty of care there to constantly be upskilling. You would hope, for example, if you go to a GP or a physio or wherever, that they're not still relying on the textbook they qualified with in 1987, you know what I mean? You're probably hoping that they're going to be upskilling constantly and learning the latest and greatest. Alright, number 4, trying to appeal to everyone. So this is a very common one we'll see when PTs get their little poster made or their business card, and it'll say fat loss, muscle building, toning, strength, mobility, rehab, prehab, post, prenatal, whatever. So when you do that, you actually just alienate people, because the majority of people are going to look and they're not going to relate to anything, right? So it's not that you shouldn't take on any client, but try to appeal to them in a way that works for you. For example, a lot of people say they want to train athletes. I'll tell you this honestly, most athletes are kind of assholes to work with. And they don't need a one-on-one PT a lot of the time. They just need a coach. And so a lot of the time they have that covered through clubs. So most of your clients, when you come to a commercial gym, usually I've found are going to be female, and they're usually going to be looking for some degree of fat loss. So if you can, I like dealing with weights, barbells, things like that. But there's other people, for example, that like doing a lot of body weight work or like CrossFit style training, and that's all fine. And that's what I would say. If you have a niche, like I'm Iron Ian, you know what I mean? I do barbell strength and conditioning work, that sort of thing. So people know at least to some degree what type of trainer they're getting when they come to me. Now, I don't not say that I don't not do like getting in better shape and fat loss with clients, but it doesn't mean that that's exclusively what I do, you know what I mean? Whereas somebody else could be like fat loss specialist, in which case, great, go ahead and do it. So find kind of what works for you. Now, you might need to be in the game a little bit of time to kind of suss out what you're good at. But for example, if you're somebody coming from a powerlifting background, there's absolutely no reason you can't be, you know, Evan, strength coach extraordinaire, whatever, you know what I mean, specializing in barbell, strength and hypertrophy training and body recomposition or whatever. It doesn't have to just be this laundry list of things you're just like, please somebody come and pay me money. So don't try to appeal to everyone, because in doing so you may actually miss out on the people that want somebody who's a bit of a specialist. So you can still take on everyone for what, and then put that through the filter of the way you train people. But obviously, you will obviously alter the way you interact with these people, just as a disclaimer, based on their individual needs and preferences. Some people like a bit of a, a drill sergeant. Some people want a more empathic approach to training. So you gotta work it that way too. But I mean, know what way you like, you're good at. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not going to come in and try and teach somebody to do Olympic weightlifting, for example. You know what I mean? That's not my wheelhouse. But I can teach any fucker to squat, bench, and deadlift. Alright, then last one is coaches that don't train themselves is a bit of a, for me personally, is a bit of a red flag. So if you are not somebody that trains, you go to the gym once in a while, you run on the treadmill and do a few curls, you are probably going to have a hard time picking up clients. I'm not saying everyone needs to be a powerlifter or a bodybuilder or a crossfitter or a weightlifter or whatever, a track and field specialist. I'm not saying that. But have some understanding of the experiences these clients are going to go through. If, let's say you're working in the gym right now and you're that guy, you don't really train a lot or whatever, you're that girl, whoever, doesn't do a massive amount of training, you're probably not in great shape, a little skinny or a little fat, whatever. Go and familiarize yourself with every single piece of equipment that's in your gym and start doing that 3 times a week. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what it is. You don't have to be a specialist, but you should have a good working understanding of everything that works in your gym and how it works. It doesn't hurt to also look like you train a little bit. I'm not saying you need to be jacked or Arnold Schwarzenegger or whatever, but having a bit of noticeable muscle or being a little bit leaner never hurt you. Now, I'm not saying that that's like top of the list, because an example I would always give is my colleague Evan Wallace, another abs powerlifter. He does amazingly well at PT because he's such a cool guy, such a nice guy, such a good attitude, very, very fun, very interesting. But Evan's quite a thin guy. He's not carrying a massive amount of muscle. Well, he is now, but I mean, when he started, and he was quite skinny, but he still got clients because of his personality. So remember, it's personal training first before anything else. But it would never hurt you to be the person that looks like they train. If it comes down to 2 sound people who know what they're talking about, and one trains and one doesn't, most people are going to opt for the one that does train. So those are 5 simple, easy tips. Yeah, so to abridge it, I'm going to read it off my little list here on my phone. Do not go exclusively online right away. Don't create barriers to entry. That's a mistake, all right? Don't solely rely on Instagram for your education, and then you don't need to appeal to everyone, and make sure you train yourself. All right, I'm out, gang. Thanks very much for joining in. I'm going to click the off button here. I will be back with more content very soon, so stay tuned. Cheers, team. Have a good one.